Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. Always a pleasure and a privilege for us to sit with you, and I mean that sincerely. It is not something we take for granted. We know that there are many other things you can spend your time doing, and we're grateful that we get this opportunity to sit down together and go through these headlines. Our goal and our mission, if you will, with these is to review them from a biblical perspective, from a scriptural mindset, and take kind of the 10,000 foot view without allowing their machinations to do what they intend, which is why we like to say we like to be informed without being overwhelmed. And so, thank you to all of you who help us with that effort. And for those of you that are new to this broadcast, we do have a labor of love that we have out there, our Remnant Watch website. And this is where you're going to find all the stories that not only we're covering tonight, but previous broadcasts as well. And I like to point out that there is a nice convenient search bar here for any previous stories. If you're looking back and trying to see, hey, did we mention something back there? That's been very useful, actually. And also want to point out that this little banner up here at the top will always take you to the latest weekly news update. So that's kind of handy. And again, we can't control where the links take you. Some of them have, all those pop-up ads and all that stuff. But we try to make it as easy as possible and thank the members of Remnant House that make these broadcasts possible. Thank you for our friends and family of this house who continue to support the work that Yahuwah has called us to do here. And in that, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, U.S. officials are saying that Israel has narrowed down its targets for a strike on Iran. And so this is, of course, a thing that everybody is waiting for and watching carefully, right? We're all paying attention to this. And why? Well, there's been so much rhetoric over the last several weeks, especially after that last barrage from Iran, that we're waiting to see what the response was going to be. And so, again, a very big deal going on right now. And this strike could happen at any time, according to this report. U.S. and Israeli officials told NBC News, and could come during this weekend. And, of course, they're on a moon calendar, followed the Pharisees, and so their timing is different than the Zadok. U.S. officials believe Israel has narrowed down what they will target in their response to Iran's attack, which these officials describe as Iranian military and energy infrastructure. There is no indication that Israel will target nuclear facilities or carry out assassinations, although that's not outside their peer review. But U.S. officials stress that the Israelis have not made a final decision about how and when to act. And I think there's multiple reasons for this, guys. I think one of the reasons why they're not sure what to do is because I've watched video from various angles, and a lot of those missiles from Iran did in fact hit and land in Israel. So I think it's reasonable for them to pause, considering some of what we're now looking at as Iran's new improved capabilities and Iran's nuclear facilities. And this is something that is of concern as well. And this is also something that we do see, right? So one of the things that we watch as a pattern is there tends to be this type of attack, and it precedes a kinetic attack many times. So be aware. It's just something to be aware of. It's just like a heads up, right? It's not necessarily automatic, but it is a heads up. So Iran's nuclear facility. So they just said they weren't sure if that's what they're going to hit. Well, somebody hit them, because their nuclear facilities and government branches are hit by a massive cyber attack. And that was amidst rising tensions with Israel, of course. And so all three branches of the Iranian government and its nuclear facilities have been hit by a massive cyber attacks, and their information has also been stolen. So they have no security. Basically, Tehran, according to latest reports, The Iranian government and the country's nuclear facilities have been hit by a massive cyber attack. While there's no information about when this happened and who was behind the attacks, it is being said that important information has been stolen. So, again, this is part of conflict. This is part of war. Stealing enemy secrets, right? Finding out what they're going to do before they're going to do it. Preemptive strikes. All these things portend conflict. And these are the things that we kind of keep an eye on because, after all, some of our friends, some of our beloved, some of our family are in harm's way. And you need to be aware if you're in this region. Iran has halted or indirect talks with the U.S., okay, as the region tensions escalate. So Iran is suspending indirect talks with the U.S. Now, they didn't have direct talks as it was. And remember, again, guys, this is a Democratic administration. This is the most friendly of the two types of administrations that the U.S. has towards Iran. So if they're having problems with this administration, it's not going to get any better if it flips to the right. Iran suspends indirect talks with the U.S. amid regional tensions as Israel considers a response to recent missile strikes. And Tehran has halted indirect talks with Washington due to the escalating regional tensions. And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Sunday, as Israel continued to plan a retaliatory strike, which of course is in response to the retaliatory strike of the Iranians, which was in response to the retaliatory strike of the Israelis, which was in response to the you get the point, okay? Currently, we do not see any ground for these talks until we get past the current crisis. So again, they're stoking this, and this has been a continuing and growing situation, obviously, in the entirety of the region. And again, I remind everyone of the Albert Pike prophecy, and that they predicted this in the 1800s, guys, that they were going to produce a third world war. And the third world war would be between Islam and Judaism, or Zionism, as they called it. And so this would also wipe out Christianity. So this collapse of Christianity that you're seeing, all the lies of Christianity being exposed, that was intentional, meant to take all the wind out of the strength out of those who are believers in Messiah because of the tricks that they pulled. So all of this is happening at the same time with intention. And now, meanwhile, again, this is not a surprise to those of you who are Bible students who know that the kings of the East have to cross over, right? So does it surprise any of us to see that China is pledging support for Iran? And I don't think that surprises anybody. This has been something that we've been paying attention to for now a year or two, I think almost 2 years, the tightening of relations between Iran, not only with China, but also with Russia, right? So Wang met President Mossad Pezeshkian on the sidelines of the annual UN General Assembly. The top diplomat promised China would always be a trustworthy partner. And Beijing, China's top diplomat Wang Yi, pledged to support Iran in safeguarding its security against, quote, external forces, end quote, in a meeting with the country's new president in New York, Beijing's foreign ministry said on Wednesday. And this is a fairly common thing, guys. The enemy of my enemy becomes my friend, right? And so when they're starting to gang up, which you can see the ganging up happening, right? When they start ganging up against the 800-pound gorilla, and when they feel like, hey, unless we stand together, we'll never stand against this force, the coalition strengthens. So we're seeing sides really deepen their ties and deepen their commitments one to another. This portends conflict, folks. This portends deep conflict. And as a matter of fact, even within the ranks of those that are supposed to be allies, they're not even talking to each other. Israel keeps U.S. in the dark on Iran retaliation plans. The Wall Street Journal has reported this. Israel so far refused to divulge specifics of its intended response to Tehran's launch of nearly 200 missiles, 180 of which I understand got through, guys. That's a significant thing. It's kind of hard to hide that. early this month, causing Biden administration to grow increasingly frustrated. I would imagine they're frustrated about a lot of things, but that's certainly one of them. The Biden administration is growing increasingly frustrated with Israel's reluctance to share details of its planned retaliation against Iran, according to U.S. officials. So the suspense continues, guys. It's going to continue to be a suspense-filled time period. Remember, what we've been paying attention to is that they like to keep you in a state of anxiety because it makes you make mistakes. It also makes it easier for them to control the movements of mass numbers of people. Only the very courageous, only the bold, only those who go against the grain would stand against that. So you know how few that is, right? Most people just capitulate, and they are counting on that. And so that's why I believe we're seeing so much gaslighting and so much mass manipulation. So, everybody out there, be awake, be aware, and remember that these are the days Messiah warned us that would be filled with deception. Now, Biden is calling on the Israeli military to stop the strikes on UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. So if you don't know that the Israeli military is no friend to the UN, U.S. officials told NBC News that Israel has narrowed its potential targets on Iran to military and energy infrastructure with an attack that could come as soon as this weekend. And so they're basically expecting at any minute that they're going to be an attack. But of course, they're hoping that maybe they can leave the UN guys alone, right? So that's kind of interesting that the U.S. has to tell its ally not to target UN forces. And I think the reason for that is because their lease is up. Remember, they were given a charter. That charter expired, folks. It expired. And I think they're worried about basically being completely shut down. And but don't get it twisted. The U.S. is still in this fight with Israel. So we are inseparably connected. The U.S. is to deploy about 100 troops to operate anti-missile systems, okay? Advanced anti-missile systems in Israel amid heightened tension. So we've got our actual troops on the ground in Israel. That is now confirmed without a doubt. Look at this. Constantly negative news is even telling you. So there's probably a whole lot more over there that they're not telling you about, right? And that's what we find out as we look into these things, is that a lot of this is staged. The U.S. will send an advanced anti-missile system. The U.S. troops will operate it to Israel to help bolster Israel's air defense following Iran's unprecedented attacks against Israel on April 13th and again on October 1st. And again, one of the things that they demonstrated in these attacks is that they were, in fact, able to hit targets in Israel. They were able to hit airfields. They did hit the Mossad office. There is a lot of very strong rumors that very key people perished in those attacks. So, and they did considerable damage to equipment. And so there is reason to be very concerned about Iran's new and increasing capabilities. And if they have, in fact, been given hypersonic missiles, which can have interchangeable warheads for all we know, right? So here's an interesting development that just came out. So Iran last week ordered an airspace clearance. Wouldn't let anything to fly over a certain part of Iran. I think it was pretty much the whole country, actually. And then all of a sudden, there was an earthquake. And so there's a lot of speculation, especially coming out of India, that Iran conducted an underground nuclear test on Saturday night. And that particular earthquake was a 4.5 right over the area that they were saying, don't fly over. So an earthquake of moderate intensity occurred in Iran and Israel on Saturday night, October 5th. Strangely enough, both the countries experienced the earthquake at a marginal difference in the timing. In such a situation, is being speculated whether Iran has conducted its nuclear tests. Isn't that interesting that it hit Israel and Iran at the same time, almost indicating their connectedness? And this is an old fight, guys. This is a way, 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 way old fight that has now come to roost. So, and so now there's speculation as to whether or not this is even going to happen. Washington is worried that Israelis will bomb Iran's nuclear sites, but can they? And what would be the retaliation strike? Like, Iran's already threatened, guys, that if they see missiles in the air or are under attack, that they're not going to wait until those things land, that they are going to counter. And they've already demonstrated their ability to hit targets inside of Israel. So I think the hesitation is wisdom. What have we wondered for out loud? I mean, I have. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've wondered out loud, what in the world what value do we get out of a bomb? And it's really easy when you're the one that's sending the bombs to think, oh, yeah, they're accomplishing our goals. But it's another thing when those bombs start coming back. It's another thing when they start hitting you. And all of a sudden, it's not so much fun. Okay, so this conflict doesn't produce good results, and there's no good that'll come from it. It's going to be a lot of bad. Speaking of things that are going to come as a result of this, here's one of them. And this is one of the things that they're working really hard to prevent from affecting, especially before the election, because they know that if this hits and affects everybody before the election, you know exactly what's going to occur. But fears of a global oil shock if the Middle East crisis intensifies, and that's a reasonable concern. I mean, after all, a considerable amount of the world's oil comes from that place. As the world absorbs the prospect of an escalating conflict in the Middle East, the potential economic fallout is sowing increased alarm. The worst fears center on a broadly debilitating development, a shock to the global oil supply. Such a result, actively contemplated in world capitals, could yield surging prices for gasoline, fuel, and other products made with petroleum, like plastics, chemicals, and fertilizers. It could discourage investment, hiring, and business expansion, threaten many economies, particularly in Europe, with the risk of recession. So now you got something else to blame for the recession. they got weather, they got war, and now they got this. They got the fear of global oil shock. They can blame their economic collapse now on the oil shock. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll be the reason why they go down. And oh, by the way, next week we're going to talk more about BRICS. We're not really paying a lot of attention to them this week, but there's a lot happening over there as well. So just know that. But we'll talk about that next week, because we have too much to cover just this week with what we already have. But know that that's going to hit you. Don't think America will not be affected, because they will. And now Moscow, and of course, this tie between Moscow and Beijing continues to strengthen, guys. So they're letting everybody know very clearly that you attack one, you attack the other. Moscow and Beijing pledge to strengthen military ties as Russian defense minister visits China. Okay, so the Russian defense minister Andrei Belousov arrived in Beijing Monday for talks with his Chinese counterpart, who called for strengthening military cooperation between the two countries. Moscow and Beijing have forged closer ties since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, an alliance that has sparked anxiety in the West as both countries seek to expand their global influence. And using the BRICS unit and that BRICS program, well, they're having that influence because they're giving third world countries who've been suppressed artificially another way, so they don't have to go begging the G7 and other countries for a bowl of porridge, right? What do you think those countries are now? They're flocking to them. They're flocking over there. Okay. This is why you're going to see every form of warfare thrown at Russia and China, because remember, anybody that threatens the global hegemony, anybody that threatens the beast's the power, the one world currency that's been running the world all this time, that's finally getting its comeuppance, but it's been running the world all this time, printing an infinitum. Usually that creates war, right? Anytime you go against that, just there's a whole list of people that are no longer here because they oppose the hegemony, right? So are we shocked to see chemical war? That Russia's basically now they're talking about Russia using a choking agent to dislodge Ukrainian soldiers. And the bottom line, there's now discussion of this, and we don't know who's doing what. So, one of the things that we've learned in these years that we've reviewed this, especially those of you recovering from any form of narcissistic abuse, is the amount of gaslighting and projecting that you have to sort through, right? So many times what you're being accused of is the very thing that they're doing. So you'll find that in headlines a lot of times where and different players in the world scene where they're accusing of one thing when they're the ones that are actually doing that. So we're really having to watch a lot of the double speak going back and forth. And I think that was a good example of it. My concern is the other way, that in their desperation, Ukraine will be the one utilizing that. So I think that's a bit of a gaslight flipperoo that we're seeing there, but we'll keep an eye on it, right? If it comes out in the future, we'll know. Now, China, speaking of, again, military things, again, this has been a big, huge theme this week. China surrounded Taiwan in a military exercise against independence. Okay, and so China deploys a record 125 military aircraft, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense says. And China launched the record-breaking number of military aircraft Monday in exercises. This is today, guys, surrounding Taiwan serving as a warning against independence, officials say. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense says the 125 Chinese military aircraft are the most that it has counted in a single day. So this is unprecedented. We've reached a new place. The ministry added that 90 of the aircraft, including warplanes, helicopters, and drones, were spotted within Taiwan's air defense identification zone. So they breached their airspace. Chinese Defense Ministry said the drills were a response to the Taiwan president's refusal to accept Beijing's demand that self-governed Taiwan acknowledge itself as a part of the People's Republic of China under the rule of the Communist Party. So they're refusing to consent to that governing. And the only way for that to now happen is, of course, by force. If the people won't consent, then the only way for that to occur would be by force. So that is certainly what we are seeing strumming up right now. And of course, the number one ally of the Taiwanese government would be the United States of America. And well, who finds this interesting? Do you find this interesting, guys? That mystery drones, the mystery drones. Come on, guys, break the mystery. Mystery drones swarmed a U.S. military base for 17 days. Isn't that the same number as the letter Q? Dun, dun, dun. For 17 days, and the Pentagon is stumped. U.S. officials don't know who is behind the drones that have flown unhindered over sensitive national security sites or how to stop them. And the U.S. Air Force, of course, was commenting on this. Who feels like you're having a little case of deja vu? Anybody having a little deja vu right now? Going, hey, I've heard this story before. I heard this mystery drone thing before. Didn't we hear this last year? We did. You can do a research. You can do a search on Remnant Watch. You'll find the story. they're recycling some things, so that's interesting. I'm not sure what it means, guys. We're not sure what they're trying to convey, but they're certainly ratcheting up the anxiety, right? Okay, so, and they keep throwing these words in the narrative, and this is constantly in the narrative. America's NATO ally warns Ukraine membership may trigger what? Dun dun dun. There it is. World War III. Hungary's top diplomat on Tuesday warned that NATO membership for Ukraine would spark World War III during a press briefing in Budapest following a Hungarian-Serbian Joint Economic Commission meeting. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade Peter Michael observed that the conflict would be triggered by the NATO members' mutual self-defense clause per a foreign ministry statement cited by local media. And so, of course, according to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, an armed attack against one member would be considered an attack against all and require all to take collective defense measures. So, of course, that is the reason why they've been pushing to get Ukraine under the NATO cover, right? So that they could then trigger this clause and force countries like the United States and others into the conflict directly. Unfortunately, I don't think that's actually going to happen for Ukraine, but we certainly can see the warning. So I don't believe that's going to be ratified, certainly not before the election. So I think a lot of that is rhetoric, but I do believe it indicates maybe just how close we are to serious conflict. And these headlines keep coming out. This is, again, Paris prepares for World War III. Thousands of French soldiers ready to arrive in Romania for simulated conflict with Russia. And it says here, according to this report, the next year will be crucial for the French army, which has undergone a major transformation in the recent years to prepare for possible conflict with Russia, according to Politico. Next May, thousands of French soldiers will take part in large-scale military exercises in Romania. The purpose of the exercise is to assess how quickly they can reach NATO's eastern flank if necessary, which is crucial if Russian President Vladimir Putin were to attack an allied NATO country. So they're acting as if they're the victims, and Russia's just going around invading all of them, and they're creating the boogeyman, right? They're creating the problem, and they're going to stoke the reaction because they already have the solution. And that's the way this works, folks. This is the way it's been working. We've been watching the same pattern be reused over and over again. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. It's called the Hegelian dialectic, and it's very effective, especially with people who aren't thinking and who want to just go back to their sitcom, their Netflix, their cup of coffee. They don't really want to think about world events or world affairs. This is how they get away with these things, okay? And again, these hacking things is part of the issue. We're seeing more and more evidence that we're nowhere near as secure as they would like you to believe. And this is one of the things that I laugh about, and I think you should too, that they're going to run the world with these insecure computer systems built on sand. They're supposed to run the world with this. Chinese hackers access U.S. telecom firms wearing national security officials. If you can't even keep your national security stuff safe, well, then we've got a problem, okay? Highly skilled group of Chinese government-linked hackers. I don't know how they know this. So they love to paint this like they've got this all summed up. But then they'll tell you later on they don't know who did it, right? Has in the last several months infiltrated multiple U.S. telecommunications firms in a likely search for sensitive information bearing on national security. Multiple sources briefed on the matter told CNN. U.S. investigators believe the hackers potentially accessed wiretap warrant requests, two of the sources said, but officials are still working to determine what information the hackers may have obtained. They don't even know. U.S. broadband and internet providers AT&T, Verizon, and Lumen are among the targets, the sources said. U.S. officials are concerned about the potential national security damage done by the hacking. And so, again, we're seeing these systems that are, running the world. They're the B system, and they're not secure. People are cracking into them all the time. Banks are getting infiltrated, all kinds. Remember the Bank of America? All the accounts went to zero. You think that was that was accidental? Was their intention rather? No, that was something that happened to them. There's a reason why these things are happening. And I think it's showing their vulnerability. I think that, if you're going to go to war, if you're picking fights around the world, you might want to secure your own infrastructure just a little better. America's Waterworks is also another area that we're under a cyber attack. Now, why does this matter? Because folks, they could change the amount of any particular chemical that's going into the water by changing the electronics. It's a very dangerous thing. Water supplier says its systems were hacked. American Waterworks provides drinking water and wastewater services to more than 14 million people in 14 states and 18 military installations. That's not a small matter. The largest supplier of drinking water and wastewater services in the U.S. is the latest target to be hit by hackers. So you're building this entire system, and it's built on sand. American Waterworks, which provides drinking water and wastewater services to more than 14 million people in 14 states and on 18 military installations, said hackers breached its computer networks and systems on Thursday. And of course, they're going to take care of it. They're taking preventative measures. Why? They're just going to tell you how, it's no problem and they've got it all under control. If you had it under control, they wouldn't have gotten in to begin with. So you clearly don't have it under control. And just because you close the door they came in doesn't mean that's the only doors they found. That's just the door they came through and the door they let you find. This could go on all day. These systems are nowhere near as secure as they like to pretend they are. And, again, it's one thing if you're in peacetime, nobody's executing. But once you go to war, well, you suddenly find out all the places that the saboteurs lay traps. And I think the West is slowly starting to question, how secure are its own electronics? Are there backdoors built into computer chips that these guys are hacking through that have nothing to do with the software? Maybe they may be hacking through a way that nobody even saw coming, through a chip they never expected. That's where I'd be looking. So, and remember that when you've been the 800-pound gorilla for multiple decades, your enemies tend to guerrilla warfare, plan and plot against you over long periods of time. So stand by. We're going to keep seeing more things along that line. Now, switching gears, the Earth itself is reacting. We watch this pretty consistently because this is a sign and a wonder that man doesn't really have a lot to do with, but does, in fact, reflect the last days. And scientists deploy monitors at Washington volcano amid unusual earthquake activity that just started happening. So Mount Adams, Washington, scientists have issued a statement following a spike in seismic activity at Mount Adams in central Washington, up in the northwest. The volcano usually sees an earthquake every 2 or 3 years. There were 6 in September 2024 alone. Okay? The most in a single month since the monitoring began in 1982. They've never seen this. Again, let's go ahead and throw the unprecedented flag, right? There's only one nearby permanent seismic monitor in response to the increased activity. Science have decided to install 3 temporary stations on Mount Adams area. So they're now concerned about a new volcanic eruption, a new volcanic activity in an area they weren't expecting it. And again, I think that Earth's got more surprises left. And so we're going to continue to see more of the reaction of Earth as it reacts. According to the scripture, it reacts to sin on the land, and nothing can stop that. So this is reality. LA is another potential scene for this. We're watching some interesting things here. LA's quake mystery 2024, once again, brings the most. So I love watching things like this, guys. You know that by now. We keep our eyes open for unprecedented or new levels, right? The most seismic activity in decades. Okay. Anybody else catching this trend? Are we seeing this? Are we glad we put these together to put them side by side? Something unprecedented is happening. Okay. A spate of notable quakes have rattled Southern California in recent months. A reminder that the last 3 decades of relative seismic quiet won't last forever. California is preparing for the annual shakeout earthquake drill, emphasizing the importance of preparedness. Oh boy, they're going to do a drill. Oh my goodness, guys. Whenever they do a drill, gee whiz. Okay, it's not your imagination. The ground beneath Southern California has been particularly unsteady as of late, with the region experiencing the more moderate-sized earthquakes this year than it has in decades. So again, unprecedented. And I think your buddy Dutch Sense would agree, right? I mean, we are seeing some crazy things happening all over the place. And again, we're just recovering right now, right on the East Coast. Those of you on the East Coast, by the way, we continue to pray for all of you who are recovering, and some are still without power. It's a horrible scene for a lot of folks. We take it for granted when these things lose steam in the news cycle, but the damage is done. And there are people that are now digging out of a lot of damage. And so we were all talking about Hurricane Milton. We forgot about Hurricane Helene that went on just a couple of weeks before that. They're still digging out of that. and more than 90 reported dead in North Carolina. Now, I believe this number is horrifically low because they basically are now telling you they can't confirm. So how can they even give you a number when they can't confirm? They can't even find entire groups of people, entire cities, entire towns. They don't know where the folks are. Okay. So again, this is nonsense. We're being told things just to make us quiet. But essentially, you're seeing a lot of more information is coming out now, and it's very, very sad. All the information that I've seen has been heartbreaking. I don't know about the rest of you, but this has really been hard to watch, difficult for us to really get our minds around and what have you. And now we're already, I mean, I hate to even tell you guys this, okay, but this is now being reported that there's another storm. Storm Tracker National Hurricane Center is monitoring an area of active weather in the Atlantic. This was just out today, less than a week after Hurricane Milton barreled across Florida. Another tropical depression could form in the Atlantic Ocean by the end of the week. Okay, so by the end of the week, you could be looking at another storm barreling down on Florida. Florida, unfortunately, man, it looks to me like somebody's decided to rob some folks. So, I mean, it's not good. Florida is not looking good. And we need to continue to pray for our brothers and sisters in Florida, especially those that are the remnant that need to exit so that they would be able to do so. And again, this is a very dangerous time period. Again, he told us it was the most perilous time in Earth's history, and it's a time of difficult choices. That's what tribulation is, folks. Tribulation is difficult choices. It's when you're halt between two opinions, when you're having a tough choice. And how many know the people that were in Florida last week when that hurricane was bearing down on them? They had a tough choice. They didn't know where it was going to hit. They don't know which way to go. And they don't know whether they should leave or not, right? And a lot of people didn't leave, and it cost them. Some did, and, maybe they felt like they didn't have to, right? So they may stay for the next one. And it's the way these things go, and that's why people end up getting taken by these things. And so you need to be really careful, sober, and vigilant in this hour, and definitely be a praying people. There's a geomagnetic disturbance that is now being reported. And this is now, again, another one of those things that they start to use to cover other stuff. So we got to keep an eye on it. Largest U.S. power grid operator on Thursday issued a possible geomagnetic disturbance warning that could impact its systems through 2 a.m. And, of course, what they're basically doing is they're constantly letting you know that anything happening with the sun can affect your power, can affect your electricity. Now, I personally believe that they're constantly seeding this into the narrative so that should they need to do that, they can. 3 million people were without power at last I saw, and I don't remember the latest update. I don't remember seeing an update saying they all got their power back. And I doubt very seriously that they're working extremely hard. As a matter of fact, one of the reports I have from the ground in Tampa was that nobody could find any crews out fixing any transformers or anything. And so are they actually down, or are they just doing that to demonstrate authority and also increase anxiety? And again, remember, folks, there is a plan for that. That's part of the MK Ultra, mix that they have to have in order to get their program to work. That's something that you need to be aware of. And so what's happening now is that people are starting to figure it out. And when they start to figure it out, well, then they don't want the help of the people that they're supposed to come and help. So members of remote North Carolina mountain community are saying they prefer FEMA to stay away. So the pushback is starting to happen now. Members of the remote community in West North Carolina devastated by recent hurricane damage said Federal Emergency Management Agency officials haven't helped them, but they prefer it that way. And they said, at this point, I don't care if FEMA comes by, and I don't want somebody to pull me out of here saying I'm working in an unsafe spot or some other nonsense. And that's exactly what a lot of them experience. And they're in the middle of course, it's unsafe. They're saving somebody from a flash flood or something. There's no safe way to do that, but you're risking your life. And, and once again, under the cover of trying to help everybody, they increase the death count. So this is a sad and horrific situation that we're continuing to watch unfold. And there's a lot of people are starting to go, wait a minute, you FEMA guys, you're not here to help, right? And so arrests are being made amid security threats, prompting FEMA contractors to stand down. The pushback is real. Rutherford County Sheriff's Office has arrested a man and charged him with going armed to the terror of the public after security threats prompted the pause in some FEMA operations around western North Carolina. So you see this? The old country boys are not buying the feds are there to help. They're just not buying it. So that's something that's new. This is not normal. Normally, when, these boys show up, everybody kind of gets out of their way and assumes they're there to help and all that. Not anymore, guys. Not anymore. Things are changing. And so this is a new situation that we haven't seen before. Here's another one that we haven't seen before. Anybody else think it's a little odd that we're suddenly seeing some things to do with chemicals? So this is the second report we've seen recently. 2 dead and 35 injured after a chemical leak of hydrogen sulfide at the Pemex Deer Park oil refinery. And this is, obviously a very serious situation. At least 2 people are dead, and nearly 3 dozen others suffered injuries after a chemical leak at an oil refinery Thursday prompted a shelter-in-place order for 2 East Texas cities. And Texas is an area that is of grave concern. It was 5 spots I went to in Texas in 1999. The leak took place in Pemex Deer Park, about 18 miles east of Houston, the Harris County Sheriff's Office said. The department reported deputies and the Deer Park Fire Department responded to the facilities at 5:23 p.m. local time for a report of hydrogen sulfide leak, a colorless gas with a strong odor. So, and of course, that did cost lives, and that is a dangerous thing. But you may say, well, that's just, one occasion, right? No big deal. Well, I thought so too. But then there was this. You guys remember this? Georgia environmental official. Remember Georgia, they had that spill, the chemical spill, literally right at the same time that we're dealing with this flooding. They have a chemical spill, right? Well, Georgia's environmental official, he collapses and dies near the state capitol after testifying about the toxic biolab fire. So a Georgia environmental official, check this out, died after suddenly collapsing near the state capitol on Tuesday during a public meeting on last month's toxic chemical plant inferno outside Atlanta, officials said. Kenny Johnson, a Rockdale County Soil and Water Conservation District supervisor, that's a mouthful, testified alongside business owners and leaders about the biolab chemical fire in Conyers, about 25 miles outside of Atlanta, which spewed clouds of hazardous chlorine gas and smoke throughout the area. Shortly afterward, the 62-year-old collapsed, was rushed to Grady Memorial Hospital, where he died. You can't make this up. That's wild. That is wild. And this is getting wilder. And again, one of the things that we've watched, how many food recalls have we seen, guys, in the last year? And again, they always want to make it seem like, at least to me anyway, it seems like what they're essentially doing is trying to make it seem like they're really on top of it. But again, when you know that their part of their plan is always to create anxiety, then this becomes a little bit different situation. 9.9 million pounds of ready-to-eat meat, poultry recalled over listeria concerns. And I'm not even sure these are real or not, but they're definitely traumatizing the food supply. A recall of almost 10 million pounds of Bruce Pack ready-to-eat meat and poultry products is underway. The possibility of listeria monocotygenes contamination prompted the Oklahoma-based company's recall of 9,986,245 total pounds of various products. So again, not a positive on the food supply. And this is, again, a lot of waste in a time of difficulty. We're seeing all kinds of recalls. Here's another one. Consumers are asked to throw away millions of eggs as FDA upgrades recall status to most serious category. So now the concern is for eggs. Weren't they concerned about our chickens Now the eggs are getting in the stores are contaminated. So you got to decide which one, where you'd rather take your risks, right? Officials are continuing to warn consumers about an ongoing egg recall that has now been upgraded to Class 1, meaning that the eggs may cause severe adverse health consequences or death. Wow, that's like the scariest scary they could put on it. And it's been recalled eggs since September when officials tied the eggs to a salmonella outbreak. And of course, the recall pertains to all eggs banded, and again, all they got to do is find one and they can recall all of them. So I think this was a bad idea from the very beginning to give that kind of power and to centralize our food supply. I think everybody's getting a real education at all the mistakes and all the potential areas that we can be hurt as a society very easily through these things. And one of the things that we're seeing now is there's effort to bring in technology and make us basically so dependent on technology that we can't even function. Now the latest thing, have you heard about this? Elon Musk is, this is kind of interesting actually, guys, but Elon Musk is bringing out the robots, man. Have you seen this, guys? I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but yeah, this is literally out of iRobot, man. This is like freaky, scary stuff. And it is just meant to make you comfortable with this technology all around you. It started with the Alexa, remember that? And all these different tech. And now people are going to be inviting this thing into their home like it's their buddy, right? Their buddy and their pal. This is the new paradigm that they're trying to get everybody to accept. Folks, this is reality now. This isn't some Jetsons episode of 30 years in the future. What will things be like? This is today. And they're building all kinds of robots, some of them for some really weird purposes, if you know what I mean. Okay, really weird. Speaking of not so great, maybe on the weird side, probably this is the criminal side. And again, we continue to see this go on in our country and around the world. And they continue to get the lights turned on, which I think is wonderful, but it is a really sad thing to observe. Christian ethics professor arrested for child porn. Child porn. That means pornography of children under the age of accountability. A Christian ethics professor has been fired from his job following his arrest for allegedly possessing child pornography. In a statement sent to the members of the campus community and Bright Divinity School in Fort Worth, Texas, last Thursday, seminary president and Reverend Stephen Cady explained that we have been informed by law enforcement that Charles Bellinger, our former faculty member, was arrested yesterday for possession of child pornography. And when Bright administration was made aware of the situation, immediately initiated our own investigation, cooperated with law enforcement, and shut down his access to school technology, personnel, and facilities, and placed him on immediate administrative leave before terminating his employment shortly thereafter. So he's not a former employee until after you get the report. Now he's a former employee. He was an employee up until you got this report. Notice how they said this former employee. It's real clever. Okay. And of course it's repugnant because he got caught. So we don't want anybody else to get caught. So that's the bad guy. Anybody else now seeing that whenever the attention gets too close to a group, they start chucking people off that they want to use as sacrificial lambs. Because I think this problem is far more pervasive than they want to let on. So there's that. Something to continue to pray for. Continue to pray for the light to come on, folks. Let's let the light come on and expose this nonsense for what it is. And my prayer is that parents will really wake up and realize that we can no longer trust these groups, these institutions, these systems with our children. You can't send your children to Rome and be surprised when they come back Romans. Look at this. This was just absolutely stunning. Just stunning. School shock. 2 teachers are suspended after giving sleepy stickers to preschool children to keep them quiet in class. The sick snooze tactics were foiled by a 4-year-old who snuck her sticker out of class
Basically what it looks to me like is they're basically drugging the kids. Again, it's not the first time that we've seen things like this. And folks, this is why, again, giving your children over to the care of strangers, people who do not share your values, who do not walk with the Most High, who do not keep the commandments of Messiah, but we're wanting them to teach our children. And then we're shocked with the way our children turn out. This is crazy. It's literally insane. Another thing that I thought was insane, we all did kind of, I think, when we first saw it, because we knew that it was going to reduce attention span and cause issues. And that was this craze with these short videos. Now, I know a lot of people use the shorts and they may be effective in certain regards. I get that. But overall, I wondered about the effect that these short videos, these Instagrams, right, these other types of short videos, and there's nobody who capitalized on the short video craze more than TikTok. But now it's being sued by 14 states that blame the app for fueling youth mental health struggles and endangering lives. And I really don't think they're necessarily wrong, but it's kind of a bit of the parent blaming the technology. So I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I do think it's an interesting development. TikTok violated state laws by claiming its platform is safe for young people and sold minors as personal identifying information without parental consent. Okay, now that's a whole nother thing. That's trafficking people, according to lawsuits filed by a coalition of 14 attorneys general. The social media site launched on September 2016 and allows users to build an online platform by posting videos that range in duration, sometimes lasting a few seconds or minutes. TikTok has come under repeated scrutiny due to concerns about data privacy and youth mental health. And so now they're using the mental health angle to strengthen their case against the trafficking of people. And again, all these platforms make their money a certain way. They make their money by gearing the content in a certain direction and then having content providers sell their audiences. That's what they're doing, selling their audiences to the platform for advertisement. So whenever these creators sign these promotional contracts or creator contracts with the providers like Google, YouTube, TikTok, they essentially are partnering with the platform. That's what they're doing. They're signing up to partner with the platform to basically gather your information for marketing purposes. So they become a lure to the sellers of information. That's why we don't believe in monetizing channels. We believe that puts you in partnership with these forces, and that is a thing that we should not do. We have no light hath no fellowship with darkness. So that's the reason why we don't do that. And those that do, I believe, are involved in trafficking. That's how I see that. And I do know that many of my brethren agree. And speaking of schools, once again, more evidence that you really shouldn't have your children in there. And here's a great headline that'll help wake you up. Will schools start using AI surveillance cameras with facial recognition? And it says some already are. And remember the glasses thing we were looking at last week, guys, where you could wear a pair of glasses and it literally will tell you who you're looking at and all their information? That's scary, right? Especially for stalkers. Nearly 400 cameras with artificial intelligence capabilities are scattered across Cheyenne Mountain School District in Colorado Springs, and they can find you. AI facial recognition. Now, in light of what we just heard, where they're finding, child porn and all kinds of stuff, you know what I mean? Is this necessarily a good idea to put our children under more cameras? AI facial recognition functionality means school administrators or security officers can upload a photo into the system identifying someone as a person of interest. Wow. When anyone matching that photo is caught on camera, school officials are notified and immediately given the relevant video footage. Wow. Never look at capability or never look at intentions, always look at capability. This capability is a violation of illegal search and seizure. It is all kinds of, there's all kinds of legal potential issues here. But one of the main things that I see is that we're for sake of security, for sake of, out of fear, people are now giving away more and more and more of their autonomy, their privacy, their and again, it's not unjustified, because again, we have security risks, you have wicked people, it makes it justified. But it still seems to always affect the innocent people. It never really seems to get the bad guys. You ever notice that the laws against the bad guys don't affect the bad guys, but they do affect the good guys? Same idea. So this is why I get a little bit nervous about some of this. I mean, it sounds good. It sounds like, oh, you're going to catch intruders and things like that. And that sounds great. But it looks to me like you're just basically locking down the surveillance. And what have we all learned? I mean, especially those of us that are a little older, we all remember the analogy of the frog, right? And the frog, if it's put in a pot of boiling water, well, it'll jump right out. But if it's put in a pot of water that is cool and is slowly warmed up, well, then he won't leave that pot. And what will happen is he'll cook himself, right? And so just understand that. I think that's what we're looking at right here. I believe that we're watching self-destruction in many parts of the world. We're, of course, many of those who are in leadership or governance are themselves reprehensible people, because the good people have abdicated that. They don't want to run those. They don't want to do those jobs. And who could blame them? You're dealing with cesspools of power-hungry people with serious greed issues and power mongers, if you will. So I don't blame people for not wanting to be involved. Nevertheless, this is the result. When good people are quiet, and when evil people are running and good people are quiet, it increases that evil. So there does need to be a rising up of those who are the humble people of earth to say, I'm going to be on the council, I'm going to be on the student or the parent teacher thing, I'm going to be on the student council, I'm going to be on the city council, I'm going to be on the county board. You're going to have to do that, because if you keep thinking some other good person is going to do it, you're finding out that that's not the case. And so let me encourage all of you to be much more proactive in your local areas. And if you're not in a place that that you're not, if you're in a place you're not supposed to be, start praying and asking him where you belong. After all, this is one of the warnings of the last days, that we would see Jerusalem encompassed with armies, and we should be in the mountains during that time. Well, I think that's it for tonight. I think that's going to be our broadcast. I pray this has been an encouragement and edification to you. We certainly always want to edify and encourage you in your walk, and never let you be overwhelmed and allow that fear to take over. No, we want to always be informed, know what's going on, but also knowing that we look up, because our redemption draws nigh. Well, thank you so much for joining us. May Elohim Baruch each and every one of you. Good night.